Stephen, thanks for your time on the show today. And how's Seattle treating you?
It's great here. Having great weather. It's raining out as usual. No, actually, we had an incredible summer. It rained practically not at all from June until about now.
That's fantastic. Well, your backdrop looks cool.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
Well, Stephen,
it's the backdrop of my yard. I'm in my den right now. So.
This is Stephen, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate this. And we've been kind of loading our audience a little bit with some background on your book, The Disappearance, The Extraordinary Disappearance of You, Stephen Kubacki. And let's dive right in. I mean, we're 45 years later. And what I think's so cool about this is that you have the new generations on TikTok and social media. Your story's blowing up.
Oh, is it? I haven't. I'm not. I mean, I knew there were a number of. There are like millions of TikTok hits before I published the book, but I haven't really kept track of kind of what's going on right now in the moment. So,
well, let's dive right into this. Let's
Sure.
talk about this. Can you describe that day before everything happens? Was there anything a little bit off to you? When you wake up that morning?
Well, I was in a pretty heightened state of awareness. I was about to do the unthinkable or the impossible, and I knew once I did it, my life would be changed forever. There was no going back. It felt like I had a calling, that I was being guided by sort of the universe, the incomprehensible. I was really jazzed up that day.
Wow. Well, and now take me through, if you could, this process, this timeline, if you will, because you disappeared that day for 15 months, correct?
Right.
And
right.
You have no recollection of those 15 months?
No, I have perfect recollection.
Oh, do you? Okay, wanted to make sure. So sorry about that.
Yeah. Well, the amnesia, when I reemerged, I had to say I didn't remember anything in order to stop the deluge of media.
Yeah.
But also because I wanted to not have my life defined by that event, which is, pretty extraordinary. But more importantly, I wanted to protect my co-conspirators, because if all was told way back then their lives would have probably taken a much different trajectory than it has. And so I've been silent to protect them. I also changed the names of the people who were involved in the book. I disguised it as much as I could to protect their privacy. But it's really up to them if they're interested in coming forward or not.
Well, and Stephen, if it's okay, can you take us through some of those 15 months, for our audience? Because I know that we've had a few that have known that you're coming on that did follow your story that way ago and are curious.
Okay, well, it begins kind of in my, I'm going to get into my childhood. It begins in childhood and adolescence. I was always very rebellious and very curious and wanted to change the world and make it better. I remember, like typical teenager, I wrote about how, the world needs more love. And I was brought up in the Vietnam War era and, all the violence. And, there was always the threat of nuclear holocaust from Russia, environmental destruction. Anyways, there was a lot going on that kind of motivated me. I studied in University of Freiburg for about a year, studied a lot of political science, and I felt I needed to do something to change things. So a number of us got together and we decided to form a conspiracy. We called ourselves the Nexalistic Revolutionary Front. I know that sounds weird. Revolutionary Front, but that was kind of the lingo back when. That wasn't an unusual term, though it sounds pretty archaic now and kind of weird.
I was curious.
So that's what we did, and we decided that that I would disappear as a way of cementing the commitment of everybody, but also so I could go underground and develop kind of collect people together, develop a form of resistance to kind of the power structures that existed, to try to change things from that kind of underground way.
Wow.
Whereas the other people decided to pursue other more traditional avenues in politics, in religion, and in finance.
This is so fascinating. And, in that time period, I'm guessing you guys, and this is just me kind of, my thoughts coming out, and which is always scary. How do you keep yourself hidden for 15 months? I mean, was this just a very elaborate, did you guys have a very intensive network?
No. No, it's, this is the 70s. There's no homeland security. There's no internet. There ain't nothing going on. So I had my passport. I kept my passport. And I let people know for, I don't know, probably at least 6 months that I always carried my passport on me because I didn't know what I wanted. I used to skip school a lot and travel.
Gotcha.
So in the middle of semester, I'd leave and, go somewhere, visit a girlfriend in Germany or something. I'd come back. My academic record was kind of up and down. When I was serious, I'd get A's, and that's so well. So yeah, I'd come back from one of my adventures and come back and, ace my tests and piss off my professors.
Man, what a time to be alive in the 70s. That's fun.
Oh, no, it was great. Yeah. But anyways, there was no surveillance back then. So you could easily travel around, it was very easy. You could not do this now. You would have to have a fake passport and a variety of other things going on. It would be a very elaborate operation. Ours was pretty minimalistic.
That makes sense. Well, and it's good. It's great to note that, and just fascinating all in once, just to kind of take us back to that time. And, going forward, 15 months later, was 15 months always kind of your ballpark here, or did you decide, okay, it's time to reemerge here?
Well, that's a good question. Well, there were a number of things happening. One, my mother never believed I died. I don't know if you read the report. I mean, there were helicopters looking for me, divers. I mean, it was, all out kind of, search to find me. And then they presumed that I probably went under the water and died. Mm-hmm. And my mother knew me a lot better. And she was the only one who believed I wasn't dead. And so she hired a detective agency and was searching for me. And she even, and she wrote these very poignant letters, which are in the book, about, her feelings toward me and looking for me. And, they'll bring me to tears. I really still feel guilty about, the suffering I caused my family and friends back then. But I was, called to a higher vision, a higher mission, that took precedence.
Right. Well, and, I got to ask you, the reemergence and then that reconnecting point with your mom and your family and friends. What's that moment like, especially because they don't know, obviously, what was going on? What was your thought as that moment was getting ready to happen?
Well, I think in the book, I was kind of in a semi-dissociative state when it happened, when I got there, and it was very difficult for me to process because your question earlier was, why 15 months? The other reason was because I couldn't carry out the mission.
Gotcha.
My mission was to go be underground, start a resistance movement, and I tried to do that in different ways, but I couldn't, it's like I was peering over the abyss into becoming a really different person, and I couldn't do it. I couldn't become a sociopath. I couldn't become a killer, in a sense. I couldn't do it. I never did anything like that, but, I was about to. And when push came to shove, I couldn't do it. And so that was kind of the end of the organization because it was really built on my ability to do that. Because in the future, if I was successful, big ifs, I was successful, then all of us would get together at some point. So we'd have people in positions of power and influence politically, religion, and financially. And then, of course, the underground movement would get together, and then we would somehow make the world a better place. That's what was different about what we were doing versus kind of what other people had tried in the past.
Can I ask you, was there a moment you realized that this was not working? Because, this is a journey. You're on this and you're building it up. Did you start to notice this? Or?
Yeah. Well, I always had, if you go through the book, you'll see there's a lot of self-doubts. We were pretty sarcastic about sometimes and kind of ridiculed ourselves about what we were doing. I always had, there's a lot of self-reflection about, about it all. I think the clincher is when I joined the French Foreign Legion, and I never officially joined. I didn't actually sign any papers to officially join, because once you join, then if you leave, you're a deserter. But I, witnessed somebody getting pretty much beaten up to the point they maybe were dead. And I had sort of these visions of what it would be like to be in the French Foreign Legion and kind of pursue that path. And that was pretty frightening. It's in the book. And that I couldn't do it. And so that was the end, pretty much. I did go back. Wow. And I went to San Francisco, and I got part of a group called the Collage Shugendo, which is kind of it was run by this kind of mystical, kind of military kind of guy. And, anyway, they're sitting there. But I knew the jig. I knew the end was there. Yeah. Okay. And the group had already broken up in different ways. And then I decided, that I had to reemerge. Yeah. That I had to, there was no, I was at the end.
Well, let me ask you this. How, when you decide, hey, it's time to reemerge here, was there ever any anxiety on your part of getting back to the starting point, or just where do you reemerge from,
I was terrified about what could happen. And it sounds kind of odd, but I felt like a failure. I felt I had failed, the organization. I failed my comrades. I failed everybody, including myself, and there was that part, though I was glad I failed, right. And that because of that failure, it really transformed me into believing that secrecy was not the right way. I became a very ardent supporter of radical transparency. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to develop a different career. And eventually I became a clinical psychologist. I got a master's in linguistics. I was a Fulbright. I did a lot of I pursued a different life. Still to help others. My focus has always my life been focused on helping others and trying to improve things. So I've been doing it about it in a much different way than I have. And writing this book is also a way to contribute to the world, and maybe it might be real helpful to people struggling, young people especially struggling with, how to make sense of life and what to do. Because, a lot of that's going on right now in the modern world. A lot of people are pretty desperate, and and some people are, they're flipping out and doing terrible things.
Well, and that's why whenever we got this connected, I thought this is a great time to really talk about this, because, the tie-ins are so fascinating, because you're right. From, worrying about nuclear fallouts every day to constant Cold War escalations and everything else you're going through. Plus the 70s, you had the Iranian gas crisis and everything else that's going on. There's crisis. No different than now. And for some of our younger generations.
Well, I think it's worse now.
Probably. And so
in certain ways,
it's just great, though, that you write this to tell your perspective and showcase, hey, I went down a similar thought process, and maybe it does guide somebody, and I think that's very important that you wrote about this. Now, I got to ask you, did you ever tell did your mom know what you did ever, or did we just?
When I reemerged.
Did you tell her?
I did tell them the truth about what happened. They really weren't interested in the details. But, I did tell them. My mother was very forgiving, and my father, they were just glad to have their son back, like most moms and dads. My siblings were a little more upset with me for a while.
I bet. Well, and now afterwards, like you said, there's a national conversation about you. There's helicopters, there's all these things, news coverage. How do you guys navigate? Especially back then, because it seemed like the press were a lot more in your face and a lot more intrusive sometimes, because there's no social media. How do you guys navigate that? Just did the amnesia statement help?
Not a way. It was just me. There was some media at the house. There was, I forget what TV crew and what station came, and they saw me hugging my grandmother. Who actually was a healer. She had a long history of healing in the Catholic Church, almost saint-like. And then my father, my mother, so there was some of that. But then I didn't want to go down that road, and I wasn't ready to go down that road. And I had a lot of TV offers. I refused them all. Actually, what's really interesting about the TV offers is if I had signed any of those contracts, I would have been their slave for life.
Yep.
For those kind of awful contracts. Yep. So I wanted to restart my life, and I began I actually started working in a factory again, because that's my history. I was grown at 13. I was picking tobacco under, 100-degree tents, and I had to work. I was very much from that kind of background.
Wow.
Father too. And, I also went, there's a big contrast. I went to Deerfield Academy, which is one of the most prestigious prep schools in the country. And, and the contrast from being a poor person, not that poor, but, I worked in order to buy my ties and my suits and all the things you had to wear. And I was with people, during the summer, what did they go for summer? They went to Switzerland for, camp.
Right.
And I was out there working. So, that also really impacted me, the disparity between the rich and powerful and, and people from average. And I the thing that what I found most interesting is that there were some very smart people I were at with Deerfield Academy, but in general, they weren't any smarter than most of the people in public school.
Right.
They just happened to have money because of inheritance and all this sort of stuff that gave them, privileges that, most of us don't have.
Well, 100%. And, I got to ask you, as we're talking here and got a couple minutes left, what are some of the things that you discovered about yourself, on this 15-month journey? Because that's where I find this most fascinating because, you're going through the journey of a lifetime within yourself. What did you discover spiritually, physically, mentally in that 15 months?
Yeah, the spiritual part is really very important. That goes throughout the book. And I describe some of my spiritual experiences early on in high school and before that. But, during the disappearance, when I was on the ice, it's kind of hard to explain, but kind of in terms of like modern multiverse theory, you can think of it as I kind of bifurcated when I was on the ice. The Nathan T. Stanfield, the person I became, or my AKA, walked off the ice, but another part of me was still on the ice and kind of entered this sort of interdimensional space, which took me, about years to kind of recover those memories about what happened. But there was this sort of connection with beings of light, kind of being in an energy shell of some sort. I was not abducted by UFOs, okay? There was no UFOs, picking me up or doing anything, there was none of that. But, the experiences with these whatevers, I call them the others, was pretty intense. And, I don't know what I learned. I learned something from all that. It's kind of hard to say. I think maybe a lot of my ideas and some of the stuff I've written has something to do with that. What did I learn? I learned, I learned, again, I mentioned, I learned that if you're going to really change the world, you need to do it in a public way. You need to be really transparent. And I think, focusing more on love and compassion and caring is what was really the key.
Well, Stephen, thank you so much for coming on for the last 25 minutes and sharing your story. It's been incredible. And before I let you go, what's the best way for us to get a copy of your book, The Disappearance? Is it on the website?
Yeah, if you look on my website, Kubacki.com, you can find it there. You can find it on Amazon if you just type my name in, on any Barnes & Noble, any of the booksellers, you can find it there. Yeah,
absolutely.
And if you open the website for me, you'll see I have a number of other writings. I'm writing a book on the multiverse guide to humanity. I'm writing some things on planetary economics, kind of a different way of looking at economics and business, a whole variety of things. So.
Well, Stephen, thank you so much. And I really mean this. This was a hell of a conversation. I had to talk to you, and I'm so glad we got this set up. Maybe in a couple of months, next year, a couple months, we can do something else and have more conversation because this was great.
Okay. Well, thank you. I appreciate the time. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to do a write-up on RiverBender.com for all of you that are just tuning in so we can link your book and get our hands on a copy. We'll take a quick break. Our Monday morning wraps up after this quick commercial break and our wrap after this.